You're listening to the Dr. Nina Show with Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hi there. Welcome to the Dr. Nina Show, Outsmart Emotional Eating. I'm your host, Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin. I'm a psychoanalyst specializing in eating disorders, and I know firsthand what it is like to struggle. I found the cure to binge eating, and now I help people all over the world find food freedom. And on this show, I am here to help you too. So today we are going to talk about how major life changes can trigger binge eating. Have you ever reached for comfort food during periods of significant transition, during periods of change? Well, you're not alone, because many people struggle with controlling their eating habits during times of stress. And that could be good stress or bad stress. It could be moving, having a baby, changing jobs, getting married or divorced, dealing with loss. These are all major life transitions that can destabilize our routines, destabilize our coping mechanisms, and make us feel kind of out of control. And sometimes this helplessness or uncertainty about life situations is displaced onto food. So instead of feeling out of control in life, we feel out of control with food. And so today I'm going to talk about the kinds of life changes that make you vulnerable to binge eating, why certain life transitions can trigger binge eating, practical ways to cope with those changes without turning to food, and more. If you are on the Instagram live stream, feel free to drop a comment, or if you have a question anytime, I will be happy to answer it. And if you are watching the show on LA Talk Radio, you can also call the show. So first of all, what are life transitions? Nowadays, we talk about transition. It has a whole other meaning, right? Transitioning from one gender to another. But life transitions are changes that disrupt our daily routines, or they alter our perception of ourselves. They can be positive or negative, but they're stressful in some way. And remember, stress can be good. There's positive stress, but it's still stress. But they create feelings of uncertainty, confusion, anxiety. And binge eating is a way to cope with these intense emotions. Not only can we turn helplessness or powerlessness over life situations into, displace that onto helplessness and powerless over food, we also have a lot of anxiety over these changes, and binge eating is a way of comforting ourselves, right? So what are some of these life transitions? Adolescence. My daughter's going to be turning 16 soon. Let me tell you, those hormonal changes, peer pressure, quest for identity, all of those things can be very stressful. It's good, but it's stressful. And that's when a lot of teens start having eating disorders or turning to or from food as a way of coping. Similarly, going to college, going to university, leaving home for the first time, adjusting to a new environment, coping with academic pressures, that can trigger binge eating, a way of coping, a way of filling the loneliness, right? If you're away from home and you don't have friends yet, that can fill the void. Entering or exiting a relationship. There's a lot of emotional intensity to getting together with someone and breaking up with them. So the beginning of new relationships, the uncertainty of new relationships, the pain of divorce or of breaking up, that can influence our eating patterns. Eating as a way of coping. Career changes, also starting a new job, losing a job. Facing challenges at work. These are all stresses. These are and if we don't have a way to cope with them, right? If we don't have a way of being with ourselves during times of difficulty, we're going to do what makes us have immediate relief, and that means turning to food. And also pregnancy, having a baby, becoming a parent, whether you're a mother or a father, that is stressful beyond, right? It's wonderful, it's amazing, but it's also super stressful. So food can help you calm down when you're super anxious, right? Sometimes you can eat to sedate yourself or binge to sedate yourself. Also, becoming a parent can bring up unresolved issues from your childhood. I've heard lots of people say, like, wow, as soon as I became a parent, I thought, how could my parents have treated me the way they did? And it brought up all of this pain, all of this, really deep, painful, unresolved experiences, trauma from their childhoods. And if you don't have a way to deal with trauma, again, binge eating, turning to food is a way of coping. Also, health issues, being diagnosed with a chronic illness or facing surgery or anything like that, it can lead to feelings of loss of control, which then we can again displace it, right? So instead of, oh, I feel so out of control over this area of my life, I'm going to try to control what I'm eating, which inevitably leads to binge eating because control, dieting, deprivation, the anticipation of deprivation, boy, that leads to the opposite. We want what we cannot have, or we get so hungry, we're famished, we're ravenous, and we end up eating the kitchen. So, that can put you into the diet binge cycle. Retirement. I'm going through the life cycle here, right? Retirement went from adolescence, now we're at retirement, just like that. So, shifting from having structure in your life to kind of an open-ended retirement, what am I going to do with my time, can be fabulous and jarring. And it could lead to feelings of having no purpose, depression, which might trigger binge eating as a way of coping with that depression. Also, loss, grief, whether you've lost a loved one who's a person or a pet, or even the end of like a phase of your life, that can be really painful and difficult. My daughter's almost 16, and I have friends with slightly older kids that are heading to college, and suddenly they're empty nesters, and it's really hard for a lot of people. I mean, for a lot of people, it's like, woohoo, yeah, alone at last. But for a lot of other people, it's, oh, this is really hard. This is painful. I miss my kids so much. And now what? And thinking about food, turning to food, thinking about meal planning, all of these things, which can then trigger binging, can be a way of coping with that. Same with moving to a new place, a new city, a new state, a new country, even across town. Everything's different. And struggling with money, financial struggles, any kind of unpredicted expenses. This is all stressful. These are all, they may not be the same level of life transitions, but they're transitions and stressors that do affect you. So, of course, not everybody who goes through these life transitions is going to respond by binge eating. People's reactions are totally different depending on what their personal coping mechanisms are, what their past experiences are, what their support systems are. But for a lot of people who do struggle with food, which means they struggle with ways of responding to themselves, self-soothing. We don't learn how to self-soothe in our culture. We're told not to feel those feelings. Just think of something positive. Just be grateful for what you have. Just, just drop it. Just ignore it. Just positive think it away. Yeah, that does not work. That does not work. You cannot ignore feelings. You cannot drop them. You can't positive think them away. You can't gratitude them away, and you cannot stuff them down. But stuffing them down helps for a little bit. That's why binging is a coping strategy. It works temporarily. But of course, temporarily is not good enough. Got to learn new ways of coping and being with yourself during these difficult times. So, what are some strategies to cope with these life transitions? Because it can be overwhelming. Even if it's a good thing, it's really overwhelming. Even if you're having a baby, if you're getting married, it it can be really intense. And what do you do with that intensity? What do you do with all of those feelings? Okay, so here are some coping strategies to consider. First, acknowledge and accept that change is inevitable, and that you're going to also have feelings about it. It is normal, and I don't use the N word normal very much, but there you have it. It is normal, typical, expected to have a range of emotions, to feel fear, anxiety, sadness, along with, in some cases, excitement, hope, all of those things. So, by accepting that you're going to have a range of feelings, you can start, you can start. Oh, wait, I'm getting a message on Instagram. Hold on. You can start. I can't see the whole message because there's something blocking, but Debbie is saying, I've moved. I've had to put my husband in assisted living. You're feeling overwhelmed. Oh, Debbie, I'm so sorry. That is really, really rough. So, Debbie, you have a lot of life transitions that you're dealing with, a lot of things that you're coping with. The first step is to recognize all that you are feeling, all that you are thinking, and then to express that, because we often go right to trying to comfort ourselves, but we skip over the expressing, like, oh, it's hard to move, it's painful to put your husband in, maybe in an assisted living, you feel overwhelmed, and overwhelmed can be an umbrella phrase that really means, scared, anxious, worried, angry, whatever it is. I'm not saying you're feeling those things, but overwhelmed can really mean other emotions. That it's easier to say you're overwhelmed than to say, oh, I feel intensely pissed off at the world, or, scared or anxious, or alone, or, whatever it is. So really recognize what those feelings are, and then express them, and then respond to yourself. Of course I feel this way. How could I not? Look at all of what's going on. Moving, husband's in assisted living. I want to eat, because I want to eat is code for I want to feel better. I don't want to feel scared and alone. I want to eat because I want to take this feeling away from myself. And when you are in that binge zone, guess what? You're not feeling scared. You're not feeling alone. You're temporarily in that not feeling space. So binging is a way of coping. Eating is a way of coping. But of course, it is a frenemy. It helps you. It copes momentarily, but it doesn't do anything in the long run, and it doesn't change the situation. It doesn't change how you respond to the situation. So it is a friend and an enemy. It is a frenemy. And it's really important to seek support. If you're going through a hard time, reaching out to friends, family, support groups, other people who are going through what you are going through, or now you're reaching out to me. I'm so happy that you are, to get support, to realize that you're not alone, to share your thoughts, to share your feelings, and sharing them with people who have similar experiences can also be really helpful, because you don't feel alone. You have some comfort, some reassurance, and some hope. And another thing that's really important is to practice self-care. And that means being kind to yourself. And self-care, I, I I always tell this story about the woman who told me she was the queen of self-care, because she got mani-pedis, and she got her hair blown out every week, and she got massages and facials, and she did all the things, right? And she's like, I'm the queen of self-care. Why do I feel so bad? Why am I still binging if I'm the queen of self-care? Self-care doesn't cut it. And what I told her was, well, hey, that's grooming, right? That's grooming. Self-care is really taking care of yourself, showing up for your emotional self, in addition to taking care of your body, or relaxing, or dealing with stress reduction, or exercising, hobbies. Self-care is also just being kind to yourself, validating your experience, reassuring yourself that you are going to get through this time, even though, yes, it is hard. It is hard, and you will get through it. Self-care means all parts of your self, your relational self, your emotional self, your creative self, your spiritual self, your all parts of you need your attention. Oh, I am so glad that I don't know what your name is, Labonia. I am so glad that you're reading The Binge Cure and that it is life changing for you. I can't read the rest of your message because there's this weird, like, thing that's covering up. Oh, it makes so much sense to me. Thank you. Oh, thank you. That means so much to me. I love when people read the book and they have that aha moment of, oh, it's not what I've been eating that is the problem. It's what's eating at me. And it's not like the problem is not food. Food is a solution to the problem. The problem is your relationship with yourself, your relationship with how you deal with difficult times, with stress, with all the things. So thank you for making me happy. Yay. All right. Okay, so more strategies to cope with life transitions. Set realistic goals. Often it seems daunting to think about, like what you have to do. So if I'm thinking about Debbie, when you had to put your husband in the assisted living, you didn't just put him in assisted living. Okay, so you have to do research. Which facility? Break that down. What does that mean? Go on Google, make calls. Like everything that you have to do is broken down into smaller steps, and it is easier to think about making calls or doing a Google search or going to visit certain places, like just one thing at a time. All of those manageable steps, realistic, smaller goals helps you make it easier on you, right? Otherwise, it's too overwhelming. Oh my God, I've got to plan a wedding. No, you've got to pick a venue. Okay, what do you need to do to pick a venue? Stuff like that. So just break everything down into manageable parts. And that way you feel good about what you are accomplishing, because you need to feel good during this time and recognize what you are doing instead of just, oh my gosh, I've got to climb the mountain. How do I get there? Remember, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So just what steps can you take? And celebrate each step, no matter how small. When you celebrate each step that you are taking, instead of thinking that the finish line is it, when you decide to run a marathon, not that I would decide to run a marathon. That sounds terrible to me, but many people love to run a marathon. But they don't just say, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to run 26 point whatever miles. They say, okay, I'm going to run a mile. Yay, me. But if you're like, oh, I ran a mile, but I still have to run another 26, you're going to feel terrible. But if it's, my goal is to run a mile, you're going to feel proud of yourself. You're going to feel good. And the more that you can acknowledge yourself, validate yourself, be there for yourself, the better you're going to feel. The better you feel, you don't need to turn to food to cope, right? Thoughts lead to feelings, lead to behaviors. So if the thought is, I am so overwhelmed, I can't stand this, I don't know what to do, I just want to eat. Because you feel all this muddle of feeling. But if you say, hey, I did this, I'm doing that, I feel good about this, then you feel good. If you feel good, you're not going to want to turn to food. And and again, I can't stress this enough. Positive changes, positive life changes like getting married, having a baby, all of those things can also cause stress. They're seen as joyful and exciting, and they are, but they also bring about so many different emotions and challenges. So getting married involves merging two lives together, adapting to a new routine, compromising, navigating potential conflicts, navigating actual conflicts. Having a baby brings you total joy, but it also requires a lot of adjustment. Sleep's a big one. Time management, increased responsibilities, all of these things. And of course, activates feelings about your own childhood. So those are some ways that you can cope during these life transitions. But let's look closer at this emotional roller coaster of how emotions during life transitions can trigger binging. So these are the feelings that come up with life transitions. And by the way, oh, Debbie, you're very welcome. I am here to be encouraging and comforting, and I hope that you can borrow my voice and be encouraging and comforting to yourself. Right? We have to learn to show up for ourselves in a way that is responsive, as Debbie said, encouraging, kind. So often we're mean to ourselves, we're hostile to ourselves. We make ourselves feel bad, and then we want to eat just to get away from our own mean voice. That sucks. We don't need that. So the kinder that we are to ourselves, the more we can turn our critic or slave driver into a friend, the better we feel. The better we feel, the less we're going to use food to cope. All right. So here are some of the feelings that come up during whatever life transition that you may be going through or may anticipate you will be going through. I am already thinking about 2 years hence when my daughter will be in college. Can't think about it. It makes me sad. Yeah, of course it does. How could it not? And happy for her. Mixed feelings. We have mixed feelings about a lot of things. So uncertainty and anxiety, change ushers in the unknown. And it can be really hard to live in a sense of uncertainty about what's going to happen. Uncertainty is often experienced as anxiety. So the next time you feel anxious or fearful, ask yourself, are you thinking about something that has happened, or are you imagining something that hasn't happened and having real feelings in the present about a future that doesn't exist? And is that about uncertainty rather than it's about, anxiety? Sometimes we convert certain feelings, like we convert uncertainty into anxiety. So it's a fine line, but it's a good question to ask yourself, because if so, you want to stay with what is, which is reality and facts and what you know to be true, instead of what if, which is just fear. And if we go to what if this happens, what if that happens, what if that doesn't happen, then we have real-time anxiety in the present about a future that doesn't exist. And then if we don't know how to also respond to ourselves, soothe ourselves, comfort ourselves, guess what? Food is going to do that. So really important to stay grounded in the present. Um, uh, there's also elation or relief, right? That certain things can bring up positive emotions, like you finally reach your goal, you got the job, you moved your house, you bought a place, you did whatever. It can bring a great sense of accomplishment, and sometimes you want to celebrate. If you don't have a way to celebrate yourself without food, guess what? You're going to celebrate with food. So be aware of that as well. Also, loneliness can come up. Changes such as moving to a new city or losing a loved one or having your husband move into assisted living, as Debbie has experienced, or experience a breakup or losing a friend or whatever. It can lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. So that with life transition often comes uncertainty, anxiety, pain, loneliness, and of course stress. It can really elevate your stress level, make you sad or depressed. Sometimes when we have something good happen, we mourn the life we used to have, and it's not logical, it's psychological, right? Logically, we're like, yes, I got the new job, I'm no longer, a poor struggling student. But then you can lose, like, oh, but I'm losing my, this might be a bad example. I'm losing my independence, or now I've got to go to work. My time is not my own. You could have mixed feelings. Our society tells us not to have feelings, so we don't know what to do with them. And our society also doesn't allow for mixed feelings. You could be happy and sad about the same thing. Also, transitions, they facilitate introspection. You might question your life choices. You might reevaluate your priorities. You might reflect on your life. Um, and if that can be scary, that can be uncomfortable. Again, having a way to respond to yourself helps you through that. But if you don't have a way to respond, food is always there. Also, you're a lot more vulnerable. So increased vulnerability during these life transitions, because things are changing. Your environment is changing. Your circumstances are changing, and that can lead you to feel really raw and really vulnerable. And of course, also because we're looking at all the feelings that can come up with life transitions. Also, you can recognize that you're resilient and that you have the emotional strength and capacity to deal with whatever that you are dealing with. And of course, everyone responds differently depending on your personal experience, your coping mechanisms that you have or don't have, support system, your temperament. Just, are you easygoing? Are you one of those people who thinks about every possible thing that could go wrong? So transitions can be really challenging, but of course they offer opportunities for you to develop as a person, and and that's always a good thing, I think. But back to why it's difficult and why it leads to binge eating, it totally disrupts your life. It changes your routines, it changes your habits, and that creates instability, disorientation. It's hard to have a healthy, balanced relationship with food when you feel so out of balance. And so binge eating is a way of coping with all of this. And it's familiar. It's food is predictable, available, and reliable. Right? Unlike life, unlike people, which can be unpredictable, unreliable, and unavailable. Food is always the same. And so when things are just kind of in transition in your life and it might feel a little haywire, well, you might want to eat because that is safe. It's predictable, it's reliable, it's available. If you reach for that bowl of ice cream, it is not going to taste like okra. It's the weirdest thing I can think of at the moment. And it's reliable. It's available. You can always get it, as opposed to you can't always find new friends when you move to a new place. You can't always find your way when you have a baby, and all of a sudden maybe you've got postpartum, maybe you don't, but your whole life feels like it's out of whack. Or any kind of change. Change can be very disruptive. And so that's when you're more likely to use food, which is a constant in your life, to feel safe. And changes an identity, becoming a mom, becoming a grandmother, becoming a widow, becoming a single person, becoming a married person. All of these things are kind of changes in our identity. And when you change your identity, you usually also lose something. So I know people who got divorced, and now they feel like they can't go out with all their friends because all their friends are married, and it doesn't feel like they have anything in common anymore. Or even someone who realized that losing weight, she lost a lot of weight, and then she realized she no longer had so much in common with a lot of her friends, because when they would go out to eat, ironically, they would talk about diets and who was getting, bariatric surgery, and what was the latest diet, and what was the latest meal plan, and who's the trainer to go to, and all of that. And this person had actually lost weight by changing her relationship with herself, using the binge cure method, I will say, And it was very disconcerting for her to realize that she actually had very little in common with many of her friends. So the other thing is using food as a reward, because I've been talking about using food as a way to cope, as a way to comfort yourself, distract yourself, fill the void. When you're lonely, that registers as emptiness. And emptiness can be symbolically filled with food, right? We don't actively think it. We don't think that way. We don't say, "Oh, I feel lonely. I feel actually empty within my body. I think I will go and eat everything in the kitchen so I will symbolically fill my loneliness with food." No, we don't think it. It's not logical. It's psychological. It's unconscious. It's hidden from our awareness, but that's what we're doing, right? Or people who are in pain, emotional pain, just terrible emotional pain, might eat so much that they're in physical pain. Have you ever eaten so much that your stomach actually hurts? You're in pain. You have to unbutton your pants, unzip them. You're just like, oh my God, I'm in physical pain, but you still can't stop eating. And you might think, wow, I'm such a food addict. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Well, guess what? Nothing is wrong with you. You just don't have the right coping strategy. Maybe you are converting emotional pain to physical pain, because guess what? It is easier to deal with physical pain, which will go away, than it is to deal with emotional pain when we don't have a way to respond to ourselves when we feel this way. So I've been talking about that, but also with transitions in life, we might use food to celebrate. New job, celebrate. New baby, celebrate. Wedding cake, right? And really be aware and cognizant of how you may be using food as a reward, or, oh, I got this promotion, celebrate. Maybe you can celebrate without food, and or have some, but when I was going to say have some but not all, but of course that's easier said than done. But when you allow yourself to have what you want, actually in time, when you really trust that you can have it in time, you will want it less. It's the anticipation of deprivation, or the experience of deprivation, that makes us want what we can't have. All right. So let me just tell you about Lara. Lara. She had a challenging divorce, and by the way, Lara, the names have been changed, so this is not her actual name. So Lara had this challenging, difficult, horrendous divorce, and so she also was in the middle of having many other transitions, because she got divorced and then she moved to a different apartment, and she started working in a different place. And she was always someone who was like really took pride in her resilience and her ability to manage stress. But she soon started to notice that there was a pattern. Every night after she got home, she would feel really alone, really lonely. It was like the silence in her apartment was very loud. And she would just find herself in the kitchen, mindlessly going from one snack to another. She wasn't hungry, but she just couldn't stop eating the snack. She was hungry for something. But it wasn't food, actually. So what started as like a little treat to comfort herself because she felt lonely became these nightly binge sessions, and she would eat bags of chips, pints of ice cream, tons of bread, and she just felt like she was in a haze, and and that's what a binge is. It's like a haze. It's that binge zone, that kind of, I've heard it described, and I certainly recall it myself, as the dead zone, where you're just not you're like a zombie. You're not thinking, you're not feeling, you just can't stop. And every morning she would wake up and she would feel regret, guilt. She would feel physical discomfort. She felt sick. And she realized, or we came to realize that she was using food to fill the emotional void left by the end of her marriage and the total upheaval of relocating and changing jobs and apartments. And so eating provided a distraction from confronting that pain and confronting that loneliness and responding to it. Also, because often what we deal with in the present is impacted or intensified by things that have happened in the past, not always, but often, it brought up feelings from the past. So her divorce brought up feelings about the breakup of her parents' marriage, which had really impacted her sense of safety and security in the world. I think she was like 7 or 8 when her parents got divorced. And she just felt like so scared and so alone and so guilty, because when she was at her mom's house, she would feel bad for her dad. And when she was at her dad's house, she would feel bad for her mom. And she just was always anxious and sad and lonely and guilty. And so her own divorce brought this up, which had been unresolved. So not only was she feeling the feelings of her own divorce, her own moving jobs and apartments, and just having so many life transitions in one time, but it brought up the past as well. So she had a real double whammy. So, what did we have to do? We had to heal the past as well as deal with and heal the present. And when that happened, and when she discovered new ways of coping with both the past and the present, she was not as affected by her circumstances. And she also learned new ways of responding to herself, comforting herself, excuse me, mm, and soothing herself. And then she stopped binging, and she was able to live far more in the present and think about what made her happy. And that includes, of course, self-care, prioritizing self-care, which we talked about it a little bit. Let's talk about some concrete examples of self-care. So there's emotional self-care that involves writing in a journal. I really believe in writing in a journal. Obviously, I do. Let me just quickly plug my new book, The Binge Cure Journal. Yes, yes, because there is something about writing that is so helpful. It helps get what's in our heads and our hearts out on the page, and it out of you onto the page. It's very cathartic. So I created the Binge Cure Journal because I wanted people to be able to take the principles that I talk about in the Binge Cure 7 Steps to Outsmart Emotional Eating and actually implement them. So journaling, for emotional self-care, journaling is a great way to self-reflect and really get to know yourself. And also emotional self-care, seeking support from a therapist, a support group, even a coach who specializes in binge eating, practicing self-compassion, practicing being encouraging to yourself. These are all ways of practicing emotional self-care. Then there's mental self-care, and that means taking a break from work, giving your mind a rest, um, or doing things that engage your mind, whether it's puzzles or whether it's reading or learning something new. It can be seeking out new experiences, learning a new language. Also, having fun. Having fun. If you don't have enough fun in your life, food becomes fun, right? Food is always a source of fun. Food is fun. So if you are not having fun in your life, look at that. See if there's a connection between the lack of fun in your life and using food for that purpose. And that means different things to different people. Maybe it's watching like your favorite TV show, or playing music, or playing a game, or dancing, or just, I don't know, anything else that's fun for you. Physical self-care is making sure you get enough sleep, taking care of your body, getting exercise, maybe just taking a walk outside. taking breaks throughout the day to just maybe, if you're sitting a lot, just to stand up, to stretch, move your body. That is, physical self-care, spiritual self-care, cultivating a sense of purpose. And that can include meditation or going to religious services or other practices that help you have a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. I want to just say one thing about meditation, which is that sometimes meditation for people who are just starting their liberation from binge eating can make things worse instead of better. Because if one of the reasons we, for example, binge at night is that we can't be with ourselves. Those thoughts and those feelings start coming up. And if we don't know how to respond to ourselves, right, there's food. So meditation is about being in a state of being. So before you start meditating, be sure that you really do some work on yourself so that you can be with yourself, respond to yourself, express yourself, and all of that. Then you can meditate. All right. And then there's social self-care. Having a network of friends and family. And for some people, that's a whole bunch of people. For other people, that's one person. Whatever it is for you, so that you don't feel alone. Or if you like being in community, not everyone does, but if that's you, it means, having a sense of community, participating in groups or clubs or organizations. Again, I should say, if you are not a member of my Facebook community, I invite you to join it. Dr. Nina's Food for Thought community. It's a group for everyone struggling with binge eating. People all over the world are there, all dealing with the very same thing. It is incredibly helpful to know that you are not alone. Social self-care can also be taking breaks from social media to be with others. I recognize the irony as I am speaking, in part live streaming on Instagram, that I am promoting taking breaks from social media. I'm not saying breaking up with social media, but just, maybe connect with people as well as people online. So the goal of self-care is to create that sense of balance, and that ability to be with yourself, to respond to yourself like a friend. And that helps you cope with whatever life throws your way. Yes, Debbie says she's mourning the life she used to have. Of course you are. How could you not? It is really painful to, have that kind of change that totally disrupts your life, your marriage, your maybe sense of self, the things you used to do, the way things used to be. How could it not be? It's very, very painful. It's very upsetting. It's very difficult. And remember this, you have been through difficult times, I'm sure, in your life, Debbie. You have been through struggles. You have overcome conflicts. You have overcome difficulties. You will overcome this. You will learn to deal with this. And of course, it is painful and difficult and awful. Both are true. And I'm really sorry you're going through that. So it is essential to really practice self-care in these ways. Another thing I want to say is, and this is important when it comes to not just life transitions, but life, letting go of perfection, accepting imperfection during life transitions, and always, because you know what, there is no such thing as perfection. In fact, look, my mug, I guess it's not a mug, it's a whatever it is. It says perfectly imperfect. We are all perfectly imperfect. So if you're a perfectionist, it may be hard to believe that there is no such thing as the perfect life, the perfect body, the perfect job, the perfect way to eat, the perfect way to be in the world, the perfect way to look. Accepting imperfection means acknowledging that it is okay not to have things figured out. It is okay to make mistakes along the way. That is how we learn. That is how we grow. And this can be really helpful when you think about your relationship with food. It means understanding it's okay to have moments of overdoing it. Or sometimes it's okay to eat cake or whatever it is, or brownies or pizza or ice cream or whatever. And not beat ourselves up, not try to be perfect, try to be kind to ourselves. If a friend of yours ate cake, would you say, oh, you were doing so great and now you ate cake and your day is ruined? I don't even like you anymore. No, you would never say that. So why are you saying that to yourself? So it's so important to be kind to ourselves, not beat ourselves up over these moments, and accepting like the only perfection in life is probably geometry. An isosceles triangle can be perfect. A human being cannot be perfect. And when you accept that and realize that you are perfectly imperfect, you can let go of some of the guilt and shame associated with eating behavior or whatever's going on in your life, and instead focus on finding a healthier way to be with yourself. And that includes your relationship with food. And self-compassion is a huge part of that. And that involves treating ourselves with the kindness and understanding that we treat others, especially during challenging times, especially during those life transitions, but really always. So instead of criticizing yourself for overeating or binging or making unhealthy food choices, offer yourself compassion and understanding, and come up with a new way to think about success. Instead of, oh, success is I didn't eat the thing or I ate broccoli. Success, how about say, oh, I'm going to redefine success as I know why I wanted to go into the kitchen. I realized I was stressed, I was overwhelmed, I was upset, I was angry, I was hangry, I was sad, whatever it is. Recognize that success, the first step of change is to recognize why you are turning to food, not focusing on food. Remember, it is not what you are eating that is the problem. It is what is eating at you. And when you change the way that you respond to your feelings, you soothe yourself with words. And when you do that, you don't need comfort food. When you have comfort words, you don't need comfort food. So I just want to bear with me because I had something that I wanted to say and now I can't. Oh, here it is. All right. Okay, so one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this topic today is that I have my own life transition to share with you. Oh, this is so hard. After a rewarding and incredible 6.5 years hosting the show on LA Talk Radio, and then starting in the pandemic, live streaming it on Instagram, I am leaving to start a new chapter in my radio show journey. Life, as we've talked about today, is full of changes. I've discussed that a lot over the years, and especially today. And of course, it's crucial we navigate those transitions with introspection and grace and resilience. And the decision to leave LA Talk Radio was not made lightly. It was very difficult for me. And I am just deeply grateful for LA Talk Radio for the opportunity that I was given to reach and connect with so many people over the years on this show, both guests and listeners. I've heard from so many people, and it's been so gratifying to be here. And I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Sam Hassan, the owner of LA Talk Radio, for believing in me back in 2017 and giving me a platform to share my insights and offer support to so many people. Thanks to Sam, I've been able to touch the lives of countless people, and I'll forever be thankful for that. And I am also very excited about what lies ahead, and I'm committed to continuing to help those in need. Thank you all my loyal listeners. Thank you so much for your unwavering support and the countless moments we've shared over the years. Here's to new beginnings and a beautiful journey of life. And so I invite you to find me on The Binge Cure with Dr. Nina, which is on Voice America and all podcast platforms. Stay curious, not critical. Bye for now.
You're listening to the Dr. Nina Show with Dr. Nina Savelle Rocklin, only on LA Talk Radio.